Come. Right, I'm just about to get back on the A1. Just give me a moment. Forward danger. Go, go, go. Okay, so hello. I'm back on the A1M. The only ones know what happened. There's the road there. Oh, I think I have a good shot of the road from this angle. Oh, right. I'll let everyone file in. Hello, Yoni. I think Yoni said that I was to pronounce her name as Yo-Ni and say the knee like the Knights of Ni from Monty Python's what's it called? Holy Grail. So thank you very much, Yo-Ni. Currently travelling through a 50 zone here. I'm on the A1. 8.8 miles away from the A1M. So that's back into a motorway for a bit. Lee Corn's there. Just saying that I just popped up. Yeah, never a good sign. Got Casper there. Ding Dong, the witch is having a vote of no confidence. Indeed he is. From Eddie Burns. Good memory. Thanks. We got Similar saying hello. Are you heading back up north? Yes, I am. Having not crossed the channel. Hi, Deus Ex Machina 82, I think. Hi, Graham. Hi, Ernie. Always good to hear from you. Need to get the normal shows back up and running. It's all been a bit distracting. When is the Monkey Island stream? Waiting for ages. Well, I was going to do a Return to Monkey Island special when it came out. I don't know if it's out yet. I think it's just been announced. But when Return to Monkey Island comes out, I will play it as a live stream and talk about politics at the same time. Okay, Lee's giving me faces. Lee's sending me emojis. Yeah. So I was on the M11. At the section of the M11 where you literally cannot turn around for 20 miles. There's like this stretch of the M11 where there are no junctions for 20 miles. And I was on that, going quite slowly because of the traffic. And I got the message from Lilia, who was the mum of the family who was supposed to be picking up today from Calais. And she's had some bad news. Her husband and her husband's parents, so her mother and father-in-law, who are in their 90s, had their house bombed yesterday, and they're being medically evacuated, probably to Prague. So after a lot of soul searching, Lilia decided to just go to Prague to go and help out. Her husband help her parents-in-law, which is fair enough considering what they've gone through. And so yeah, she was like, just give me 10 minutes and we'll decide what we're going to do, whether we're going to go to Prague or whether we're going to come over to the UK, drop the kids off in Durham with the dog, and then she'd get the flight to Prague. The problem there is I keep talking about how difficult this government make it for refugees. Essentially, once you're in the UK, you can't get out for a few weeks until your biometrics have been verified by the Home Office or something. And this is a problem that we had with Natasha, who wanted to go back and get Ollie the dog a couple of weeks ago. She didn't have her approval to leave the country, and if she did, she might not be able to get back again. And obviously, if you're a mum and you've fled war with your children and your children are left in a foreign country with people that you don't really know at this point, and while you go and do other stuff and you don't know how long you're going to be away. I completely understand where Lily is coming from here, so no blame there at all whatsoever. It's just a case of really, really sucky timing, because after we had the discussion and everything, I had got onto the M25 and I had found myself in a bloody traffic jam, probably caused by the fact that the tube's not running today, so everyone's driving everywhere, I don't know. But I was in a traffic jam near Brentford, something like that, in the northeast of London, and I was heading towards the Dartford crossing. I didn't actually go across the Dartford crossing, so save myself some money there. I basically sat in a traffic jam for an hour, not being able to get off because the runoff lanes had X's on saying you can't leave at this junction. So I was like, you're kidding me. So I went to the next junction, and I could see as I was driving on the other side of the motorway, it was just like completely clogged full of traffic. So I was like, well, I'm not going back that way. So I took a little bit of a windy route through the local roads, pulled over, called up the Channel Tunnel people, who were very nice actually, and explained the situation, and they waived any fees for transferring my journey. They said, look, it's available for a year, and just change the dates when you need to. So that's great. So I should be able to just change the dates when I do actually go over. Where in Ukraine is the house? I'm not quite sure, Lee. I'm assuming that they're in the east. I don't know which actual city Lilia comes from. I could check on her Facebook, but it would literally mean touching my phone, which I'm not allowed to do under new stricter phone use regulations that have come into force since the new year. So yes, someone just said it's a bloodbath on Twitter. Yeah, I can imagine, with the vote of no confidence going in for Boris Johnson. But just finished talking about Ukraine, and then we'll move on. We'll talk a little bit about the vote for no confidence tonight. I've also spoken to Ben Chambers, who does 60 Million Rising, and he does a lot of he's done a lot of chats with me, he's up for a chat tonight about the vote of no confidence if I do a show. So I'm probably going to try and do a show tonight. Don't forget, I'll have been driving for the best part of 12 hours before I do this show, so if I'm not quite with it, you'll understand why. But yeah, one of the problems that we're going to have over the next couple of months is that we're going to want to continue to help people from Ukraine, but it is going to become increasingly difficult, not just because the theatre of war has moved, etc., but also it's fading into the background a little bit now. It's been 100 years, Jesus Christ, no, 100 days since the beginning of the war, and because it's been on the news every single day, people are getting that same war fatigue that they got reading about the war in Yemen, the war in Syria, wars all around the world where, the Iran Iraq war, I remember this in the 1980s, it just went on and on and on. And 1 million people died. 1 million people died in the Iran Iraq war. But it just sort of faded into the background after a while. It was just an ongoing conflict. And that's a danger when it comes to wanting to be able to help the people of Ukraine in any way that we can. And I was talking over the weekend to a friend of mine about the fact that you have these sort of big charities. You have the Red Cross and the UNHCR, who are there, but a lot of the processes that they put into place slow things down a lot. So when it comes to people like myself and others who are happy to just fill a car up full of stuff and head to the border with what they can, pick up a few people and take them somewhere, even though it's quite a small thing to do comparatively, compared with what needs to be done as a whole. It helps. It really, really helps, and it takes the pressure off these, some of the established services that we can just sort of do this at a drop of a hat. We don't have to go through a whole consultation in order to just get there, do what needs to be done, and get back. The thing is, because the rules change every day, we've seen this ourselves in real time with Ukrainians wanting to come here, the visa regulations, which are originally very onerous, and then they became a little less onerous. They're still onerous. There's a lot of issues that we're still having now with animals, as I discussed this morning, with APHA, which is a division of DEFRA, which has been trying its best, and the people helping out are doing their best. No doubt about that, because a lot of people working for the APHA at the moment on this issue are vets themselves. They want what's best for the animal, and obviously they're human, so they care about the people who are coming over, unlike the Tories, who are not human. They're kind of some horrible bunch of cylindrical creatures wearing human suits, disguise their lack of empathy, the lack of a soul, lack of decency, honour, respect, or anything approaching a positive characteristic, intelligence. And anyway, so it means that with the situation changing day by day, not just in the war but also in our response to the war, it does mean that it is helpful when we are in a position to do stuff like this. And do you know what? It doesn't always work out. I was talking to Vicky, who is Lilia's sponsor in Cambridgeshire, and she said, "You're very good-natured about this, I'm driving all the way down to London and then basically turning around and driving back up again." And I said, well, I'm used to it. I'm used to it. When I travelled around the world, almost every day something would go wrong and I wouldn't be able to do what I wanted to do. And at the start of it, I got frustrated. I got frustrated as hell. There's footage of it. I was in Cape Verde, the beginning of the 5th week, stuck in Cape Verde without a boat, where I actually took my hat off my head. I've got it on camera. I took my hat off my head and I threw it on the ground and I stamped on it like Yosemite Sam in the cartoons. I was like, yeah, I need to chill out a bit. So now I'm a little bit older, possibly a little bit wiser, I just try and just think, well, let's roll with the punches. These things happen. So for those of you just joining us on the live feed here, I was supposed to be going to Calais today on a one-day trip to go and pick up a family and a dog from Calais, a Ukrainian family who've been waiting to get into the UK for 3 months now. 3 months. And the license for their dog had finally come through. It was registered for today. You've got to come through on the day that they tell you to come through on, and you've got to use a method of transport that you've established. You can't just get on the ferry. You can't fly when you can fly, but the people in the government have told the airlines that Ukrainians couldn't fly with their pets when actually they could. And so the whole thing is a massive cluster F, and essentially, through no fault of their own, the family in Calais can't leave today. And I only found this out after driving down to London. So I was on the M25 when I actually had to turn around and head back up to Durham. Particularly gutting for me because one of my younger stepdaughter has an inset day today, so I could have spent the day with Imogen instead of driving on a motorway. So that's a little bit frustrating, but like I say, as I get older, I just sort of know Tomorrow is another day. Channeling my own little Scarlet O'Hara there. So yeah, that's what's happening there. So heading back up the A1M. Well, I've got 11 miles of motorway. I'm on the A1M at the moment. You can tell because the sign's turned blue. And then after this, I'll be back on the A1 for a bit. So we get past. We go to Leeds area, and then it's motorway all the way. Right, so let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind. If you want to leave a comment saying Graham talk about Ukraine more, but let's just leave that aside for the moment. This is the Graham Hughes Politics channel, not the Graham Hughes Travel channel, unfortunately. We need to talk a little bit about Boris Johnson and his vote of confidence later today. So I've been listening to the radio. I listened to James O'Brien, and then I listened to a little bit to Sheila Fogarty, who does back a little bit when she gets these crank callers, but not as much as I would like. I find myself doing that thing. This is another thing from getting older, where you talk to the radio. I find myself doing the thing where you sort of you're saying what you want the presenter to say to these people. So what's this new vid adventure about then? Let's hear a proof of Boris. Yeah, so the reason why I'm doing a video is because today I was supposed to be going picking the family with their dog and heading back to, taking them to Cambridgeshire where they're staying with their sponsor family, and then I was going to head back up to Durham. But that it hasn't worked out that way. So in the event, I've just had a lovely trip up and down the A1M. But yeah, Boris Johnson, he's facing a vote of confidence tonight, or a vote of no confidence. And yeah, when these wingnuts call in and they're like, yeah, but Boris is special, and literally someone called in to say they should leave him alone because he's special. What, like a special child that needs to get special lessons after school? I don't, what? Great, you know, well, this isn't nothing like advice, love it. We're talking about the person in charge of the country, but yeah, there are people out there who genuinely love nothing more than to tuck their forelocks, say that Boris is special, Johnson is special, and that if anyone says anything mean, it's because they're wicked, evil Remainers. So at which point Sheila Fogarty should just say, what about Steve Barclay? You know, the head of the ERG once. Oh, sorry, Steve Baker, not Barclay. What about Brexit hardman Steve Baker? Hey, what about him? Is he a Remainer? Is he part of the Remainer plot? Hidden deep inside the ERG, a Remainer plot to get rid of Boris Johnson. And it's like, it's kind of fascinating to see grown-ups behaving in this way of, you know, when you see the old footage of the Beatles arriving on the tarmac of an airport, there's this crowd of young girls and they're literally screaming and they're sort of holding their faces and dancing from one foot to the other and shaking their heads as they scream, and you're like, okay, I understand that level of adulation from an adolescent. When you got little old ladies calling up, maybe they were those girls in the 1960s. Big Ringo fans probably, he was affected too. But like that kind of giving up any sense of self-respect and any sense of just, it's embarrassing. I feel embarrassed for them. Lee calls us tweets posted. Thank you, Lee. Thank you. But yeah, it's painful. It is, as we say, painful. To see fully grown people, grown-ups, people with a vote, and they say, oh, you know, you've got to follow Boris Johnson because he's our leader. And I think everyone's being mean to him. One of the people who called up the radio said, oh, it's the media. I think it's a couple of them actually, because they always try and get the hashtag scum media trending at these times, don't they, on Twitter? But and all the bots will be out today. I'm kind of glad that I'm not online in that respect, because well, you know what, I don't even argue with them anymore. I just insult their mothers and then block them. God, don't you just wish, you know, next time Nick privately educated Ferrari, you know, the privately educated pigman on the breakfast LBC show, I don't listen to, but sometimes I hear the clips online where he's got this thing now where he has to say to everyone who comes on from the Labour Party, no matter what they're talking about, so they can be talking about the death toll of children in Ukraine, and he'll go, can a woman have a penis? And I just wish a Labour MP would say to him, well, you see, the thing is, Nick, women have had penises for centuries, if not millennia. Your mother, for instance. And then let the silence hang when the cogs get around in Nick Ferrari's head. He goes, whoa, something along the lines of, leave my mother out of this. And to which you can always say, well, you know, she didn't do herself any favours. Or, even better, if he says, my mother doesn't have a penis, you can either say, are you sure? Have you checked? Or you can say, yes, she does. Goldie Looking Chain wrote a song about it. You see, that's what I would do if I was a politician, which is why I'm not a politician. Anyway, the point being, back to these people, yeah, they were complaining about the media. This is all the media. The media's driving this. It's the Ramonas and the media. And I'm like, the media? Okay, Sheila, what you got to say to this person who's called up now to blame the media on what Boris Johnson has done in full view of everybody, i.e. lied to Parliament on purpose, misled Parliament, and then not refused to take any responsibility, not sacked anyone, not disciplined anyone at all, and changed the rules of the ministerial code to stop himself falling foul of the ministerial code when this parliamentary select committee rules that he has misled Parliament, which he has. And he'll say, no, it was inadvertent, it was inadvertent, it was inadvertent. And you're like, okay, right. Okay. So the media. Let's talk about the media for a moment. What media are they talking about? This is what I want Sheila Fogarty to say. What media would that be? Would that be the Daily Mail that on the day that the Sue Gray report landed, the headline the next day was about possible rail strikes over the Jubilee weekend, which didn't happen, by the way. They're happening now, but they didn't happen over the Jubilee weekend. Maybe they're talking about the Tory Graph, the newspaper that pays Boris Johnson £250,000 a year, or as Boris Johnson calls it, chicken feed, to write columns once a week for. That's very anti-Boris Johnson there. Maybe it's the Express, which, when it isn't on a mission to catalogue every animate and inanimate object in the universe and decry whether it cures or causes cancer, or whether it's whittering on about Princess Diana, still takes a break from that to say how great Boris Johnson is. How evil us Ramonas are. Yes. Or maybe they're talking about the Sun newspaper owned by Rupert Murdoch, or maybe the Times newspaper also owned by Rupert Murdoch. Murdoch being a major partner in the Conservative Party. Famously saying he doesn't like the EU because he goes to number 10 and everyone does what he tells them to. But when he goes to the EU, no one will listen, which is why it's such a mad Brexiteer. So yeah, maybe they mean some other media. Maybe they mean Gammon Box News, maybe they mean Talk TV, maybe the BBC, which seems to keep on having technical problems, like they didn't broadcast the booing of Boris Johnson. They seem to have some technical problems last time when Boris Johnson turned up to the cenotaph looking like an unmade bed, and they used older footage on the report in the evening. They used older footage where he looked a bit more tidy. And apparently it was an editing mistake. Yeah, okay. Or is that the same BBC that has Question Time that had, what was it? Was it a few dozen MEPs on it in its time? Not one who wasn't a Brexiteer. Or the same Question Time that invited Nigel Farage on every other week for 10 years. That BBC. Okay. Oh yeah, that evil media. The evil BBC have tried to do a Panorama documentary about Boris Johnson's law breaking while we were all in lockdown and we couldn't attend our friends' funerals. And yet it's somehow turned halfway into a love letter from Laura, privately educated Kunzberg, to Boris, privately educated Johnson. It's almost like they're all in it together. All the old boys. Yeah. Don't know anything about UK politics. Your PM looks a bit funny. Yeah. Like a clown, like an evil clown. Like Pennywise from It. Anyway, so yeah. Boris Johnson. It's the media. It's maybe they're talking about Facebook. I mean, that's the new media, isn't it? Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. Those channels that more than anybody else help to spread misinformation about COVID-19, especially about vaccinations, so that every dickhead in the world got to read about how the vaccines were really dangerous. And what was good for you, what was actually really good for you, is to die of COVID, as over 1 million Americans have done, mostly Republicans, because they thought it was nothing to worry about. It was just a lump, just a little lump on your bollock, nothing to worry about. Oops, now they're dead. And people using anecdotal data, anecdotal data, that's an oxymoron. People using anecdotes instead of data. People listening to their Aunt Marjorie on Facebook rather than listening to, I don't know, their doctor who is qualified to opine on such matters. Yeah, good job Facebook, good job Twitter, which was dominated for many years by Donald Trump. Donald Trump famously won the election basically because of his evil tweets, and they didn't actually chuck him off until he managed to kill a couple of American policemen by telling his mob to go into storm the Capitol building and murder people on the way. Okay, great, well done Twitter. Or maybe YouTube, which has allowed hate videos to remain inexplicably because they don't employ enough people to check everything, because they what's more important to Google and Facebook and Twitter is money. And then Facebook is probably the worst of the lot, but that's not saying much, they're all pretty bad. Facebook, which worked with Cambridge Analytica to target users, to lie to them about the EU so they would vote for Brexit. Targeted Americans to lie to them about Hillary Clinton so they thought that she was in charge of a paedophile ring in a basement of a pizza firm, in a pizza company, in a pizza restaurant in Washington DC that doesn't even have a basement. So that happened. Oh, what joy for every girl and boy. But yeah, they're the right-wing media. The right-wing media peeps, they're all out to get Boris Johnson because they're just big meanies. Channel 4, yeah, they're going to privatise Channel 4 because 96% of the people that were polled thought that they wanted to privatise Channel 4. Actually, 96% of the people polled thought that it would be a terrible idea and they shouldn't do it. But that won't stop Nadine Dorries. Bloody hell. You know when you say someone is thick as pig shit, it's quite hard to offend pig shit because first of all it's inanimate, secondly it's, you know, it's pig shit, pretty thick. But she is fundamentally dense. I mean, she is a fundamental particle of matter. She's a singularity. She swallows light. That's how dense she is. She is a black hole in more ways than one. An absolutely terrible, terrible, terrible woman who wants to leave her stamp on the world by destroying things, which is what a lot of the Tories want to do, you know. It's all they want to do. That's all they know how to do, is just destroy, hurt people, pull apart families. Why? I do not know. Oh, I'm seeing some brake lights coming on over yonder. No, sorry. I was going to have to slam on then. That would be fun. I am 23 miles south of Leeds. I've got 1 hour and 36 minutes left to go before I get back home. I told Kat that I'll be back around 5, but I pulled over at Starbucks to get some coffee. And I put my seat back and put my timer on for 15 minutes and got 15 minutes kept. You know, like Lalo in Breaking Bad. No, what's it called? Better Call Saul. Just put your seat back, 15 minutes of kip, jobs are good. I'm all awake now. So, just to finish up on what I want to say about Boris Johnson and this vote today, which I think isn't a plot by Remainers. I don't think it's a plot by the media by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's just the fact that his shtick has grown tiresome and he's a privileged little shit, and the Tory party is a party of vicious little capitalist and essentially they're like sharks. If they smell blood, they'll go for it. They are afraid that they're going to lose the next election, which means they'll lose power, which means they'll lose money, and money is all they care about. These people, these Tories, they just care about lining their pockets with the nation's cash, rubbing their hands together with glee, and see what the last few publicly owned companies they can privatise. Their ultimate triumph will be the NHS one day, which they're currently trying to kill off by 1,000 cuts. They need to be out. These scumbags need to be out. The only argument that I think is left to have that's worthwhile at the moment for people who aren't far-right, money-worshipping, soulless ghouls, i.e. Tory voters, is whether it's better for the country and the other political parties who will get in at the next election. Is it better that Boris Johnson is kicked out tonight, or is it better that he stays on for another year and the Tory party continues to hemorrhage votes left, right and centre as he continues to be the world's most vile leader of a Western nation since Trump was kicked out of office. Now, you see, Boris Johnson won't do the honourable thing. If he wins, but only by a small margin, he'll cling on. He'll cling on because he puts something above his party, and that's himself. He puts himself above the party, above the country, above the Queen, above the law, above absolutely everything. King Boris, he thinks he is the king of the world king. Obviously he's not. Obviously he's just a little two-bit scumbag, just happened to be born rich enough for his parents to afford to send him to one of the poshest, most elite schools in Britain, Eton, of which 55 of our prime ministers, 20 of which went to Eton. 55 prime ministers we've had in this country, 20 of them went to Eton. So the question that needs to be asked is whether it is better for us lot who hate Boris Johnson and hate the Tories for him to stay or for him to go. I understand the argument that it's better for him to stay because he will cause more damage, arguably, to the Tory party if he stays on. But I'm not minded to go with that. I think he should go. I think he should go for the good of the country. But also, I do have a very genuine concern that he is a slippery little and I feel like he would be able to get out of it. Get out of this mess. Politics, you don't know what's going to happen next. You really don't. And if he clings on to power for a few more months and then something daft happens with Keir Starmer, which gives Boris Johnson the opportunity to say, see, we're all the same, we're all the same, we're all the same, we're all scumbags, we're all liars. What about this? What about this guy? What about this guy doing this? What about? And that could be more dangerous because he is a slippery son of a bitch. And I can't see him staying on as being as damaging to the Tory party right now as him being kicked out. If he is kicked out, whoever replaces him, all they're going to have is their policies to lean back on, what they've done, what they've achieved, which, if you've been taking notes, which I have, is the square root of F all. That's what the Tories have achieved. They've destroyed a lot of things. I can give you a list of the things they've destroyed, but they have achieved absolutely zero in positive things that have been good for the nation. The list is empty. The cupboard is bare. When it comes to this particular Tory party, for the last 12 years, they haven't achieved shit. And the stuff they crow about achieving isn't all that. Boris Johnson will always bang on about vaccines and vaccines and vaccines. We saw that last week when the Sue Gray report came out. We saw him whinging about his vaccine rollout. What about the vaccines? Hey, what about the vaccines? Every country had vaccines. Every country in the world has had a vaccine. Than the UK. Sorry, just saying other countries have had as a result of the UK when it comes to the vaccine rollouts. Trotted out the lie about the EU would have stopped us from being the first to vaccinate people. No, it wouldn't. That was an opt-in system, as most things are in the EU. If you didn't want to be part of it, you didn't have to be part of it. Some countries in the European Union got the Sputnik vaccination from Russia. So there you go. Absolutely nothing. We've got absolutely nothing they can say that they did, that someone else didn't do better, or that didn't have horrible failure behind it. I.e., the failure to protect people in care homes, the illegality of sending people who are positive, who had COVID, back to care homes, which this government did, to die, and also to spread COVID to other people in the care home to also die. 170,000 confirmed COVID deaths under the watch of this government, more than any other, proportionally more than any other advanced economy, with the possible exception of America. Well done. And America had Donald Trump. Yeah, I missed who just left that message about him being an unexploded device. You don't leave him there, you get rid of him ASAP. Yeah, I absolutely agree. He needs to be gotten rid of. Now, what I'm hoping is this. I'm hoping that it's devastating for him. I'm hoping that he loses. I don't think he will, but it's the hope that gets you in it. No, I'm hoping he loses. Or he scrapes it. He absolutely scrapes it by just a handful of votes. And there's reasons to be positive here. Only 90 of his colleagues, only 90 Party MPs have tweeted that they support him publicly. And this is a secret vote, which is important. So, if he squeaks it, I'm just hoping he doesn't win by bloody landslide, whatever. But if he does, still not all bad. I mean, there's no good way out of this for Boris Johnson, really, or the Tory party. But if he squeaks it, and then he stays on by just a handful of votes, when the election happens, 52-48, yeah, when the by-elections happen next week, no, 2 weeks time, 2 weeks on Thursday. Oh, it's going to be June the 23rd. It's going to be the 6th anniversary of the Brexit vote. These two by-elections in Wakefield, caused by an MP being a paedophile and abusing a child, and another election in, is it Tiverton? Is it somewhere down in the southeast or southwest, I think, which has been caused by another MP, Tory MP, of course, looking at porn by accident in the House of Commons on 2 occasions. To view porn once in the House of Commons may be regarded as unfortunate. To look at it twice seems like you've got a porn addiction, mate. What are you doing being an MP? Anyway, right, we've had a report of a blocked lane, which isn't good. So we've got the old reduced speed limit, reduced speed signs up. Dear. I'm going down to 60. I was actually ambling along with 60 anyway. So yeah, if Boris Johnson squeaks through and then his party loses catastrophically in this by-election that's coming up, I think they'll change the rules of the 1922 committee and have another vote, which is what they did to Theresa May. Because the Conservative Party is not a party of ideologues. It doesn't have an ethos as such. It doesn't have core policies that are core conservative policies. It will embrace any policies that it sees fit. The reason for this is the Conservative Party exists for one reason, and one reason alone, and that is to win power. The Conservatives are absolutely obsessed with being in power all of the time. The reason for that is they want to make money. They want to make lots of money, and the best way to make lots of money is to be in power. This is why in the 1960s, Ernest Marples was behind the catastrophic ripping up of 2/3 of the British rail network. He also happened to own one of the country's largest motorway building firms. It's why in the 1980s, after privatising the British Telecom, British Gas, British Leyland, British everything, British Rail, a lot of the people involved in the privatisation, a lot of the Tories involved in the privatisation of those companies ended up on the board of said companies. The capitalist, commercial, competition-based companies that replaced what had gone before. And yet, a lot of these companies kept a monopoly on the system, or ran it in a way that they got to enjoy the profit-making bits, but other companies didn't. So I'll give an example, like British Telecom. All our telecom is still run via British Telecom, Openreach, whatever it's called, it's still British Telecom. And if you are with TalkTalk, or if you're with Sky, or you're with someone else, generally your phone line will still go through BT lines that they have to rent from BT. With the railways, obviously you've got lots of different companies running the actual carriages, but the tracks themselves used to be a private company for a bit, but then they realised it wasn't going to work, so they re-nationalised the actual rails themselves. Network Rail call themselves as a rail track. It was rail track and then it was Network Rail, or vice versa. And essentially it's the shit part of the network that doesn't make any money, and you can't make your shareholders happy with that, so why would you? So that's the bit that's still kind of nationalised, whereas everything else is privatised because shareholders need their money, they need their dividends. These are people who have so much money they can afford shares. They have so much money they can afford to give money to a company with literally no connection to them whatsoever in order to make more money. When Brexit came along, obviously another bonanza for the Tory party to make shed loads of money. Again, of course they're going to go for that. That's why Rees-Mogg moved his Somerset management funds to Dublin. Such a nice man. Can Mr. Johnson call a snap election after getting ditched? No. not when he's not leader anymore. Anyway, in 2011, one of the concessions the Conservatives made to the Liberal Democrats was that they were bringing a fixed term Parliament Act to stop the ruling party deciding on a whim to have a general election. You had to have permission from the House in order to have an early election. So in order for the Conservatives to have an election in December of 2019, for instance, they needed the permission of, you guessed it, the Labour Party. And they got it. Because at the time, the leader of the Labour Party was an idiot, absolute dickhead. Like someone who's like monumentally stupid. Like someone who's just like born without a brain. You hear about babies that are born with the heart outside? Yeah, he was born with his brain outside. If that's possible. I don't know how he still functions. Maybe he just hides under a hat. I don't know. But the upshot of which was we didn't have to have an election in December 2019. We could have pushed for a government of national, what's it called? National unity, GNU. That would have seen us into a referendum on what we wanted to do about Europe, whether we wanted to stay in or whether we wanted to leave. If we did leave, whether we wanted to stay in the single market, the customs union. These options could have been given to the electorate, but they weren't. The option given to the electorate was some scruffy toff who can barely string a sentence together, who is inexplicably popular, who people just absolutely fawn at his feet for no good reason, because he's not even that good a politician, and Boris Johnson. See what I did there? Anyway, it was a question for a lot of people of between being stuck behind a rock and a hard place, and essentially a lot of Labour voters didn't turn out because they've been told to F off and join the Tories for the past previous 3 or 4 years because they wanted to remain in the EU, which the Tories didn't want to do, by the way, just to make that very clear. So when you said to a Remainer, F off and join the Tories, it was a bit of a non sequitur, that one. But yeah, so this Labour Party, this Conservative Party, has changed the rules back again. Got rid of this fixed term Parliament Act that were only brought in because of the coalition government in the early 2010s, and now they can call an election whenever they want without having to ask permission. If we'd had a government of national unity, we would have had one going into the pandemic, and that would have been so much better because you would have had competent people in posts, competent people from across the political spectrum in posts. You also would have had a situation where no one was out to make lots of money, like Matt Hancock and his mates. You wouldn't see situations where Matt Hancock was giving his pub landlords a PPE deal worth £500,000 out of taxpayers' money. Just wouldn't have seen it because it would be a government national unity, and that could have seen us through the crisis. And then this year, 2022, we could have had a general election. right now, when Boris Johnson is least popular. That would have been good. And we could have also been part of the EU as well, still. But the problem was, there was this really, really, really arrogant old man in charge of Labour who couldn't believe that he was unpopular. And unfortunately, his lackeys couldn't believe he was unpopular either, because they'd look at the polls and they'd go, wow, minus 60 popularity rating. That's lower than Trump. Well, I'm sure it's just a typo. Anyway, so then that's my hot take on this vote tonight. I would rather Boris Johnson is gotten rid of. If they don't achieve quite as many votes as they need, I hope it's quite close, because I feel like when the by-election results come in 2 weeks, they'll have another vote of no confidence. They'll change the rules, they'll get rid of him, because the Tory party cares about one thing, and that's its own survival and staying in power forever. If Boris Johnson goes, and one of the arguments made for keeping him is that people are so useless in the Tory party, other people are so useless, you couldn't possibly get rid of Johnson because you'd have to replace him with someone even more useless than him, I guess, which is a hell of an argument really when you think about it. Just not for too long. But you know what? They're right. If Boris Johnson goes, whoever replaces him, I mean, Liz Truss, come on. Nadine Dorries, what? Rishi Sunak, no way. Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. Jeremy Hunt, people hate him. They won't be able to rely on their charm to get through, because they have no charm. They have no charm. Oods, yeah, definitely Oods. Is that Ood? But yeah, seriously, and the Tories will be toast. I kind of got the feeling now maybe the Tories will be toast in the next election anyway, especially if the Liberal Democrats and Labour work together to get the Tories out, which I really hope they do. But I think that the risk is lessened a lot if Boris Johnson is out of power. Because here's something else as well. Probably no matter what Boris Johnson does next as leader, it'll never look as bad as him having dozens of house parties every night during lockdown when we couldn't see our loved ones, when we couldn't attend the funerals of our friends, of our family members who died. That's what I think. So he'll get away with more shit and more shit and more shit. And I'm hoping that once they get rid of him, there'll be no point in mollycoddling the Brexit lunatics on the fringe. And also a lot of the more insane secretaries of state and government ministers, I mean, they're all insane, but the ones who are like particularly psychopathic, like Jacob Rees-Mogg and Liz Truss and Nadine Dorries, I think they'll be out the cabinet tomorrow, because they're absolutely useless. They are shit at their jobs. They are monumentally crap at their jobs. If you were that crap at your job, I'd like to say that if you were that crap at your job, you'll get fired, but I think you go to jail. Someone just mentioned about the fact that the Corbyn lot didn't tell people to join the Lib Dems, they told them to join the Tories. I know, but they called us red tie Tories. I was just like really insulting. I had someone who told me I wasn't a Remainer. You're not a real Remainer. Like, what? You don't support Jeremy Corbyn? Sorry, because I don't support a leaver, a guy who wants us to leave the EU. A guy that said the day after the referendum that we should trigger Article 50 immediately. Because I didn't support him, I wasn't a real Remainer. Okay. normalisation of deviance. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The fact that if he stays on, no matter what he gets up to, he'll get away with it because it won't seem as bad as what he's done before. And this is straight out the Trump playbook, where Trump just did outrageous thing after outrageous thing, and it was hard to keep up with all the outrageous things that he had done. But the absolute monumental lack of respect that Boris Johnson showed by having all these parties for his press office, no journalist ever picks up on this. One of my huge bugbears with the mainstream media is that the people who they choose, who are nearly all privately educated, to interview these politicians who are, by and large, their old schoolmates, who they, debated, engaged in debating society in sixth form. They never ask the questions that I want them to ask. They never put these things. And when politicians come out with absolute garbage, and you know they're going to come out with it because they've said it in all their interviews. You know what they're going to say, and they'll have that reply already written up. Say, hang on, straight away. Almost like fact checking in real time. That's what I'd like to see. With Boris Johnson, he's like getting away with absolute murder, and he goes, well, I did have all these parties, but it was for the press office because they were working really hard. The press office, why does no one put up? Well, because they all work for the press, and they don't want to know what a lazy bunch of bastards journalists are. Journalists, 9 out of 10 of them are alcoholics. They are lazy little scumbags. The ones who work for all those tabloid newspapers. There are a few good ones, the ones that used to write for the enemy. They're all right. But by and large, journalists are incredibly lazy people. Not the ones who go to war zones, I might add, but the ones who literally just hang around in the bar in Parliament all day and then write about some gossip that's going on. That's not a job. That's not a job. That's a teenage girl keeping a diary, only with worse spelling mistakes. And then you've got these who are columnists. A columnist is not a journalist. Here's what I think. Again, it's like a teenage girl's freaking diary. Sorry if it sounds a bit sexist. It could be a teenage boy's diary. But still, here's what I think about this. Oh, it's so unreasonable. It's so unfair. Oh, it's political correctness gone wrong. You're like, oh my God, seriously? This is what passes for journalism these days? You write a column? What? Is it every day? No, it's once a week. Once a week! You write a column once a week, and that's a job, is it? I'm sorry, I write a lot. I write prolifically. And I'm sorry, but like one column a week? That's like an hour of work. That's what you do. What you do for the other, 200 hours of a week? I mean, it boggles the mind, my friends. Boggles the mind. But yeah, they're saying, the press office, they work really hard. The press office, the people who write up the press release that goes out to the Telegraph, that goes out to the Daily Hill, the Express, the Scum newspaper, they they literally have to come up with one side of A4 with government propaganda on it, which is so easy. You could get some manatees to pick a coloured ball and put it into a basket, and you can just pick it out to use the adjectives that you need. There was an interview with Natalie L. Thicko, the MP for Dover. She kept the name of the ex-husband, their ex-sex offender husband, who went to jail for being a sex offender, who went to jail for being a nonce. L. Thicko was interviewed, and she managed to say the word deliver 7 times in a 30-second interview. 7 times. About Boris Johnson delivering. He's been delivering. He's delivering for Britain. He's delivering for the people. He's delivered. It was wild. It was absolutely wild to see that. And these people are in a position of power. And people elect them. People are like, yeah, I like the colour of that, Jim. And it's like, what? Yeah, government of a major economy. 6th biggest economy in the world. And we have these absolute burgers in charge. Such. It would be funny if it wasn't so tragic. So what else has happened today is that John Penrose, who is the MP and he's in charge of ethics, he's the anti-corruption czar. And by the way, he's resigned his post as anti-corruption czar because Boris Johnson is so corrupt. And yet, yes, another person whose job it is to tell Boris Johnson that he's evil and corrupt has fallen on their sword rather than Boris Johnson. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? But he's the husband of Dido Harding, Dido privately educated Harding, who was made a sir or a knight or something on the grounds that she's very posh, she likes horses, and she went to university with David Cameron. And Dildo Harding was instrumental in the absolute fiasco that was this £37,000 million, 37,000 million, that's not a typo, that was blown on the test and trace app that didn't work, that didn't save a single mother-ing life. Not one. £37 billion that they could have spent on protecting the elderly, that they could have spent on PPE for people, carers going from house to house looking after elderly people during the pandemic. Something that had been farmed out to private companies because someone's got to make money out of human misery, don't they? Yay! They do, you know. There's human misery, there's coin in that. Get some coin. Get yourself some coin, guys. People are starving. People are dying. People are suffering. Get yourself some money. Some filthy lucre. Oh, did you see, talking about filthy lucre, did you see that fat old gammon shite, John Lydon or Lyndon or whatever his name is, Johnny Rotten? He's been whinging about Danny Boyle's new movie, Pistol. He wanted to stop them using Sex Pistols songs, but fortunately, because he didn't write the songs, he just known the songs, he couldn't stop them. Somebody on Twitter pointed out that the Sex Pistols were a boy band put together by a clothes manufacturer in order to sell clothes, which someone really didn't know. Clothes shops, like not manufacturer, but a clothes shop in order to sell clothes. And they didn't invent punk, it was invented by the Ramones and the New York Dolls a few years earlier in New York. Can't really argue with that. But you know what? Now he's a fat-headed Brexiteer and he does adverts to Country Life Butter. How very punk. One of my favourite questions that was ever posed on the TV show QI is how do you turn a lifelong Labour voter into a Conservative voter overnight? And the answer was have them win the lottery. That really stayed with me. Really stayed with me. And it's got to be the nut that Labour needs to crack. Because in the same way that a toothless yokel living in a swamp in Alabama will always vote Republican no matter how much Republicans shit on them, literally, in some cases, it's because they don't see themselves as poor. They see themselves as temporarily embarrassed millionaires. And Labour need to get this through their thick head. They really, really do. That people do not like to be called poor. They do not like to be called poor. Don't say that you are fighting on behalf of the poor, because no one thinks you're fighting on behalf of them. Trust me on this. Nobody thinks that Labour, when they say they're fighting for the poor, thinks they're fighting for them. They think they're fighting for other people who are poorer. Even if they use food banks. I know this is counterintuitive, and I know that there's a lot of people who are painfully middle class who don't really get this, but this is the way it is, okay? Don't call people poor. Never use that term. Just don't use it, Labour. Poor people economically disadvantaged, or temporarily economically embarrassed, or something like that. Just don't ever use that 4-letter word beginning with P, because people don't feel like it applies to them. What Labour, I guess there's a lot of things that Labour need to do, but I feel it's like really fundamental to the ethos of Labour, is they need to appeal again to people who have drifted over to the Conservatives, even though the Conservatives don't do anything to help them. And the way that Labour can do this, and the way that Labour need to do this, is by showing, not good just using words, but actually showing, which they can do on a constituent level, that they are helping people, spreading happiness, you know, making people better off. Oh, I just got a super chat talking about making people better off. Thank you very much for my 158 Hong Kong dollars from David Faulkner. The only thing better than watching the Jubilee is watching the Tory party ripping themselves apart. Still following you, Graham. Oh, thanks, David. Thank you very much. So yeah, if Labour can crack that nut and show people, because what's happened a lot around where I live in the north, not so much in Liverpool, because Liverpool's a very different kettle of fish, and anyone who's lived there or from Liverpool knows what I'm talking about when I say this. We have a very strong civic spirit and a very strong communal spirit, like the spirit of a community there. Other places not so much, and I noticed this in Durham quite a lot. You'll talk to people who are economically disadvantaged, and their big bugbear at Labour is they're perceived as helping out minorities over working class white kids who see all this money being given to help fund a cultural centre or help fund some outreach programme specifically targeted towards people of different faiths or different ethnicities or different sexualities, whatever. But they feel abandoned. They do feel that. They feel abandoned by Labour. And this is where Labour could really steal a march on the Tories by showing that no, actually it's the Conservatives that aren't helping these people. Labour are, and these are the things that Labour are going to do in order to help. It's not such an issue with the Lib Dems up where I am. I mean, Lib Dems aren't so big. I mean, they're generally speaking, they're the party that you voted for if you didn't want to vote Labour for whatever reason, that, you know, knowing that the Tories would never get in. But now that's been turned upside down after the results of the 2019 election. But all those red wall seats in the north are Boris Johnson's to lose, and he will lose them. By God, he will lose every single one of them, judging by what I've spoken to people about. But my point here is this can't be just a popularity contest, Boris Johnson in the next election. It needs to have some real substance behind it, and Labour need to show, and they can do this, they need to show that they are the party for everyone. They are there to help everyone. They are there to improve the lives of the nation, the real party of levelling up. Whereas the Tories are there for themselves. That's it. In fact, that should be the line. We're here for you. They're there for themselves. You could have 200 bloody billboards up with different Tory MPs over the years who just line their pockets with Britain's cash. Picture of them, what they did. Tories are just in it for themselves. In it for themselves. Don't vote Tory. That'll have a double effect as well, because it would also help out the Lib Dems in the south, where there's areas where Labour are never going to win, and we really need a Lib pact. So hopefully, I'm sick of the silly parties. I just want a sensible party, taking the sensible option and doing things to make the better National Lottery renamed Labour. Yeah, that'd be good actually. But yeah, Labour needs really to have a look at its policies and its ethos and its way it communicates. I have a huge problem with the way Labour communicates at the moment. It really does feel quite pronouncements from up on high. I took part in a Labour meeting about green jobs, green futures last week, and it was a Skype, it was a Zoom meeting. It wasn't anything high level, but some of the points raised there felt a little bit obvious. It was like we need more electric cars, we need more public transport. If I have one major criticism of the Labour administration of 1997 to 2010, it's the Iraq War. If I have a second one, it is transport. They had the opportunity to really revolutionise transport in the UK, and they chose not to. They came up with a half-baked idea for HS2, which, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, they messed that up. This is coming from someone who is a supporter of more train lines being built. I'm a huge supporter of that. I want to get rid of these motorways. I'd be happy for more motorways to be shrunk down to 2 lanes each way, and for the other carriageway to be used for a rail line, which is effectively what you've got on the M20 at the moment. Yeah, with HS2, without changing the topic too much, it was all about capacity, and I've spoken about this before. The problem is you have the East Coast Main Line and the West Coast Main Line, and you have these fast trains that go on both of them, but you also have these slow regional trains that also use the same lines. So what the people in charge thought is, hey, here's a good idea, we'll make a new line that's dedicated for high-speed rail. I think they were looking through the telescope the wrong way. Here's what I would do if I was drafted into power tomorrow. Build HS2 to Birmingham. That's a fait accompli. There's nothing we can do about that. Build it to Birmingham. But from Birmingham to Liverpool, and Birmingham up to the north, up to Manchester, Sheffield, Leeds, Newcastle, Carlisle, I would, actually all the way up to Edinburgh, Scotland, and Glasgow, I would build new lines that are for exclusively regional trains. Okay, not more like major intercity lines, just regional trains from Liverpool to Manchester. So they're not using the same track as the East Coast Main Line, the West Coast Main Line. See where I'm getting to with this? Because if you take those trains off the track, you can use the East Coast Main Line and the West Coast Main Line, which are currently at capacity. You can use them for just high-speed rail. And okay, it won't be the highest speed rail, but to be honest with you, you're talking about a difference in travel time of minutes, depending on whether it's a dedicated high-speed track or whether you just use the East Coast Main Line and the West Coast Main Line to their full capacity. Trains can go pretty fast along those, fast enough. You can get from London to Liverpool in just over 2 hours. That'll do, mate. I don't need it to be an hour and a half. 2 hours is fine. I'm happy with that. Get the slow trains off those tracks. You can use the old lines, because it doesn't matter that they're going up too steep or that the corners aren't straight enough. You don't have the same problems that you have when you're trying to construct a whole new high-speed rail, in that it's got to be dead straight and dead flat. You don't have that problem because it's only very regional trains. They don't need to go so fast, and that could be a solution to the problem that we have at the moment. Instead of building high-speed rail, we build more regional rail, which would be cheaper, which we could do without so much disruption, and still have the same end goal, which is to move the fast trains and the regional trains, the slower trains, away from each other, so they're not using the same line. That's it. That's all I'm going to say about that. And also, it means that you could use the slow lines in order to get to London for like a £5, which is about how much it should be from Liverpool to London in my book, if you don't care that it's going to take 3 hours, which I don't. If you've really got to get there in 2 hours and 7 minutes, fine, take the fast train. Spend 200 quid or whatever it is, ridiculous amount. But if you want to take the slow train, you can, and it's there, it's an option. Let me know what you think in the comments about my rail plan. That's my rail plan. And that would work for the Northern Powerhouse as well. So the train lines just aren't as congested as at the moment they are. Meanwhile, London gets the Elizabeth line. Or what is it? 73 miles of it? Which is the distance from Liverpool to Leeds via Manchester on the train. Indeed. Yeah, Lee, you've made a really good point there about the Labour unions blocking. The Labour unions, the ones that backed Jeremy Corbyn in the first place, using their block vote to block PR. Honestly, I feel like Labour would be better off saying to the unions, we will represent you, but you can't tell us what to do. And the unions will go, fine, we're not going to give you our union dues then anymore. The money we take from our members, some of which goes towards the Labour Party. And I think the Labour Party needs to bite that bullet. I really do. Instead of having people who are working, people who are part of a union giving money to Labour, they might not be Labour supporters. I know my brother, when he was in the union and they gave to Labour, and he wanted to stay in the union but not give the money to Labour, and there wasn't really much of a way around it. And this was at a time when Jeremy Corbyn was in charge, and my brother had pretty much the same opinion on Jeremy Corbyn as I did. He was an absolute menace to the left, and an absolute darling to the right, because he ensured Boris Johnson's 80-seat majority. Boris Johnson would not have got that majority had Corbyn not been the leader of the Labour Party. It is as simple as that. Maybe he might have squeaked the election, he might have won, but not by that much. The Labour vote absolutely collapsed, well and truly. Well and absolutely truly. And the problem is, when people try and justify Corbyn's failure and say, yes, but more people voted for Corbyn than ever before in history of voting. Boris Johnson can pick that up and say 14 million people voted for me, so you can't get rid of me because 14 million... So he's using the same argument. Oh, but more of a percentage of people voted. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're still lost. You're still lost by loads. And that's the system as it's set up at the moment. But I'm hoping that we get a Lib Lab pact in the next election, and I'm hoping that the deal is Labour get in, hopefully in a coalition with the Liberals. The reason for that is the price for the coalition will be PR. And once we get PR, that means the Tories will never be in power again. Not in my lifetime, matey. Not in my lifetime. And what a wonderful world that will be. Maybe the successors of the Tory party, maybe something that the Tory party can become in the future, the hard right chumocracy of the Tory party, this thieving nest of vipers who just exist to steal the nation's cash, enrich themselves, line their own pockets, feather their own nests, will be dead. Because it hasn't won a majority of the vote since, I think, the war, except on maybe one occasion. And that's significant. So, okay, well, I've talked about a few things here. We talked a little bit about Ukraine at the beginning. We talked about Boris Johnson's leadership situation. We talked a little bit about Labour, where Labour need to go next. Labour need to work on communication massively. We might be able to help with that, by the way, people watching this, so watch this space. And yeah, we're hoping that whether he wins this evening or whether he loses, I think this is hopefully the beginning of the end of Boris Johnson's political career. Because the man is an absolute psychopath, scumbag, sociopath, gobshite. He is a terrible, terrible person. He is an awful, awful person. He is a bad man. And the fact that he has been allowed to run roughshod over our democracy, our society, our sense of basic decency for far too long is a blot on the conscience of every person in this country with an ounce of decency about them, who has some kind of principles, some kind of honour. And it's going to take a lot of time, a very, very long time, to clean up the mess these scumbags have made. I was driving through Newcastle yesterday, and just north of, well, obviously Newcastle's on the north, Gateshead on the south of the river. You get into Newcastle, and they've got this hideous inner city motorway, charred and blackened with soot from the car exhaust, 50 years. Absolutely disgusting flyovers, raised roads, tunnels, all falling apart, cracked, water dripping. And I'm just driving through this maze of just shiteness, and I'm just like, this has all got to be ripped down. This has got to be ripped down. I mean, the concrete's probably messed up anyway, because concrete's really crap building material. It's the worst you can possibly imagine. It's a building material that really struggles to survive more than a few decades before it all falls apart, like papier mache or mashed potato. It's basically solidified mashed potato with a few bits of metal in it. And all I could think while I was driving around this horrible apocalyptic maze of motorway spurs, some of which went somewhere, some of which just were cut off because the motorway was never finished. No motorways were ever finished in this country. The M1 wasn't finished, it just slams into the North Circular. The M62 was never finished, that's why it starts at Junction 5. All these motorways never finished. The M25, you could argue, is finished. It makes a whole loop, but it was actually two motorways originally. They were splodged together to make one. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, it's been 50 years since they built this crap at the behest of the Tory government that just wants to make loads of money by destroying the train network, getting everyone off the train and getting everyone into a car and onto the motorways. And here we are, 50 years later, and we're having to deal with it. We're having to deal with the mess the Tories made in the 60s. Actually, it's more than 50 years now. Bloody hell, 60 years. 60 years! 60 years ago, the Tories decided to embark on a mission to rip up the nation's railways and replace them with motorways. Things like the Hammersmith flyover. Beautiful. What a beautiful. Give it an award for architecture. Jesus shit. And who built the Hammersmith flyover? Answers on the postcard, boys and girls. I can't be else raising. It was Ernest Marples. Marples Ridgeway Construction built the Hammersmith flyover. Which was nice. Nice to know that the government minister responsible for getting rid of 2/3 of the British rail network is also responsible for making loads of money out of building concrete shite in our cities. However, I'm hoping that after getting rid of those horrific Churchill flyover things in Liverpool, because they were falling apart, there's going to be a move now to get rid of these horrible inner city motorways that already is in America. So in upstate New York, there's a town up there, is it Rochester maybe? I don't know, it's one of the towns up there that had an orbital motorway freeway, as they call it, freeway going around the city, and effectively it cut off communities from each other because it was a big 8-lane highway. You couldn't cross it. Houses on one side were worth less than $10,000. Sorry, less than $100,000. That was the majority black area, and the majority white area on the other side, the nice side of the motorway, were worth 3 or 4 times that. Separating my motorways. They decided to get rid of it. They decided to get rid of it and just replace it with just a normal suburban road. And they had all this area now where the road used to be, which they have started building office blocks, and shops, and places for people to live. And the south loop, the south part of the loop, has now been completely transformed. The problem is it's really expensive to undo the ridiculous policies of the past. But I was reading up about this, and I thought it was interesting because one of the things that I often talked about a lot on my travels, is the infuriating way for years we built cities. We built the transportation needs of a city around the needs of a car rather than human beings. Cars took precedence over people. And if you want to have a little glimpse into how mad that was, in Liverpool in the 60s, they had this vision called the City in the Sky, in which the cars lived at the ground level and the pedestrians got about on little skinny, narrow, concrete bridges going across the city. And you'd walk everywhere on the first floor. You'd go into a shopping centre, and then you come out the shopping from the station, you come out and you climb up steps. There's also subtitled the F the disabled plan. You walk up these steps, this concrete narrow bridge, always stank of piss, and you'll cross over into the shopping centre. You'll be on the first floor. The cars would park underneath. The cars would dominate the ground. So anything built on the ground, that would all be covered in tarmac. We'll get rid of all bushes and trees and anything green. Just pull up this oil from the bowels of the earth, and we'll smear it all over the city centre. Wow, there you go. And then the people could walk in these little tiny little narrow bridges that would take them from one building to the next, take them over from the car park to the bus gyratory to the shopping centre, and you'll never have to touch the ground. You never have to actually touch the ground. It was an appalling, anti-human plan. If cars grew sentient and cars decided to build a city in which they enslaved humans, they would come up with pretty much the City in the Sky plan, planned by Liverpool city planners in the 1950s and 60s. And vestiges of this abomination were still there for a very, very long time, not least till I was a teenager, till I was in my late teens, before a lot of these concrete conduits were actually demolished because they were disgusting, they were ugly, and they were pointless. Because one of the things about humans is when there's a big crowd of them, they tend to take up a lot of space, and trying to channel them down a little tiny little passageway to take them over cars which are belching out smoke everywhere and exhaust and shit isn't the best way of doing that. I'm sorry to say. I'm not sorry to say. I just hate it. I hate the way so many of our cities were built around the needs of the car. So I'd love to champion the pushback against this and get rid of these flyovers, get rid of these disgusting multi-storey car parks, just blots on the landscape. You'll have this beautiful old Georgian building, or Victorian building, or Edwardian building, or even an Art Deco building. And next to it, well, I suppose that would be Edwardian. And next to it, you'll have this NCP car park that was just built, thrown up in a week. And the car parking spaces cost more to rent than an actual apartment, a furnished apartment. You've got to rent this spot for 2 hours, and it inexplicably costs £7.30. And you're like, how does that cost so much for me to put my car there? That's ridiculous. City centres wonder why they've just fallen apart. I mean, you've got Amazon, and recently you had COVID as well, but the fact that you had the sort of choice whether to drive to the Trafford Centre where you can park for free, or try and fight your way into Manchester City Centre and then find a car park and then stress the hell out about getting back to your car at the exact time, or else you'll get a massive fine, which is a regressive taxation on the poor, the economically disadvantaged, because it's a much bigger proportion of your income than someone who is on 150k a year. Obviously it is. And the stress of parking, the stress of finding somewhere to put your car. But of course you can't take the train, because in a lot of areas, when I was growing up in Liverpool, and also in Manchester until fairly recently, the train wasn't an option. The tram wasn't an option in Manchester. It's still not an option in Liverpool, because we needed a few extra quid from the Labour government back in the 2000s. I think it was 43 million or something we needed from the government for our tram network, for the first line to be put in, and the government said no. It still bothers me to this day. I think I met the ex-Tory Secretary of State, Labour Secretary of State for Transport. This was after they were beaten in the 2010 election, and she was giving a talk, and one of the questions I asked was about why Labour just didn't do anything with transport when they were in power. They could have renationalised British Rail. They could have put in place things that would have helped the North. All they did was HS2, which doesn't really help the North at all, and Crossrail, which doesn't help the North at all. And meanwhile, we're stuck with crappy old rolling stock, and it takes me as long to get from Durham to Liverpool as it does to get from Durham to London, which is like twice the distance. Crazy, I know. So then, I seem to have got another super chat while I was blathering away. Ooh, oh, there it is. Oh, thanks, Akbar Ali. Thank you so much. $5. Toll all along distance motorway. Send that money to extend Crossrail up the west coast. Yeah, that'd be a good idea, actually, Akbar. But yeah, I didn't realise there were so many comments coming in. What about the hitchhiking option in Manchester? Well, you know, I used to pick up hitchhikers, but you don't see them anymore. In the southeast, banishing private car use and encouraging public transport will have the unintended consequence of adding greater wealth and resources to London. Well, yeah. Is it that unintended though? Is it that unintended? I don't know. I don't know if it is, friends. I don't know if it is. Oh, gotta go through this 50 zone. I would like to see huge investment, £37 billion of investment in northern public transport. It's really quite embarrassing. In London, per person, the government invests at least a few thousand, at least a few hundred. I mean, it might actually be a couple of £1,000s a year per person in public transport in London and the surrounding areas in the southeast. Meanwhile, up in Newcastle, it's something like £16 per person per year. You want to talk to me about a levelling up agenda, you know? Reagan Elite, £5 super chat, thank you! Woo! Thank you very much. That's made me feel a bit better after driving all the way down to bloody London on my stepdaughter's inset day. Catherine's working today, so Imogen's just going to spend the whole day sitting in front of the telly, probably, when we could have gone out and, you know, gone somewhere, had ice cream or something. We missed that whole day with my stepdaughter. Driven all the way to London, driven all the way back, which has cost a lot in fuel, to put it mildly, in the middle of a fuel crisis. So yeah, thank you very much for the super chats. It takes the edge off. It takes the edge off the fact that at least 41 people think this video is alright. And yeah, obviously I'll try and do a bit of a live show tonight when the results come in. So I'll probably start at about 8 o'clock until then. It won't be too interesting. I don't know what time they're going to announce it, but I'm hoping that Boris Johnson loses, and I'm hoping that he's out on his ear and goes off to spend more time with his families, all 17 of them, including the ones that we don't know about, including the ones that he's got a super injunction, so they can't even talk about the fact that we don't even know about them. What a lovely man. You got to worry about these people who like Boris Johnson. You got to ask them the one question: would you leave him in a room with your 16-year-old daughter? If the answer is no, then you have to ask them, so you wouldn't trust him to look after your 16-year-old daughter, but you trust him to look after the country? Which is something that I often ask Americans who voted for Trump about Trump. Would you leave him in a room with your 16-year-old daughter? Oh, God, marry him. You know what he's like. Oh. I miss your streams because we're close to the time. Well, I miss them because I've not been doing so many of them recently because I've been going over to Ukraine. Our constitution needs to be malleable, else it won't adjust to time. Well, that's the thing. Context. Every single state in America, all 50 states have got their own state constitutions, and every single one of them has been amended over the years. Has been amended. In fact, the national constitution of America has been amended. Hence the amendments. The first one being the government won't stop your freedom of speech. Doesn't mention Twitter, by the way, boys and girls. Doesn't mention Twitter. Doesn't mention Facebook. They're a private company and they can do what they like. If they don't want you spouting your crap on their platform, then they're entirely within their rights to say, get out. In the same way that if you go into a pub and you act like a twat, the publican, the landlord, is within their right, or landlady, is within their rights to bar you from the pub. You can't claim it is your freedom of speech. More so if you come from the UK and we don't even have a codified freedom of speech law in this country. You are allowed to say anything as long as it doesn't endanger people's lives or invite a riot or pressure someone into doing some mischief, kill someone, or something that's libel or slanderous. You can get away with saying almost anything, but the government can stop you because we have no First Amendment to our Constitution. We don't even have a written Constitution. Free speech. And if you notice how all these free speech maniacs, they only care about their own free speech. They don't care about yours or mine. Yeah. And it's funny. One of the things that I find on Twitter and on Facebook that's said to me the most, people don't bother arguing with me. I think this is because if they're aware of me in any way, they probably know that I know a lot of stuff about stuff, and I'm quite hard to argue against because I've got the counter arguments in my back pocket. I'll just throw them out at you, and it's easy for me. It's like chewing gum. So instead of that, they tell me to shut up. They're not interested in debating. They're not interested in finding out what it's like in other countries or what it's like, or why we're in this situation. They just want to stick their fingers in their ears and go, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. And I find that very interesting because when I'm having a go at someone, I don't tend to tell them to shut up. I tell them what I think of them, maybe. I'm not above throwing in an insult or two, especially about their mothers. But at the same time, I won't really tell them that they shouldn't be saying anything and they should get off Twitter and that they should not have an opinion about a certain thing. I think it's kind of fair enough to have an opinion about a certain thing, but if that opinion is harmful and children are now being abused in, say, Idaho in America, where Ohio. In Ohio in America, they've just passed a law saying that if a teenager in school who is doing sport is accused of being trans, they must show their genitalia to an adult in order to prove they're not. Think about where that's going, people. Think about where that's going. Who wants that job? Go on, hands up. Who wants the job of children's genital inspector? You're right. Gary Glitter wants that job. Yeah. Rolf Harris arguably wants that job. Jimmy Savile definitely wants that job. Great. Well done, J.K. Rowling. So whereas I won't necessarily say that J.K. Rowling should shut up, because what I prefer she does is looks at what she's done and goes, oh shit. Because her actions and her vile, venomous tweets about the trans community have led to this. Lawmakers in Ohio have used her words to justify this law, to justify a law which mandates the inspection of the genitals of children. And I suppose maybe J.K. Rowling would think that's fair enough if they're really trans, but if they're not, this is child abuse against cis children. I guess she thinks that child abuse against trans children is justified in some way because of the one trans teen athlete in the whole state of Ohio. The one trans athlete in the whole state, the whole freaking state. So no, I would like J.K. Rowling to consider what she's done. Personally, I'd like to rub her face in her own vomit and force her to look in the mirror, to quote from the Holy Bible. Not the Holy Bible. Manic's album. What's that for? Is it from 1984? That clip. Someone look it up. Anyway, so, you know, it's one thing saying that someone should be, someone should be argued against. Someone should be put right. Someone should. If you come up with some horrific opinion about something, like saying, I think that it's right that should happen to young people in America, in anywhere in the world, I don't think it's right. But if you think it's right, then I think that you should be exposed to arguments against that, and that's fair enough. But what's interesting is that if you do stand up for these people, the first thing they'll say, maybe not J.K. Rowling, maybe that's a bad example, the Twitter bots or people on Twitter who are idiots who follow, listen religiously to the Joe Rogan podcast and think that that's got to be, the only way to think is through the filter of a WWE commentator or something. I don't know what he does, but he's a right winger who has people like Benjamin and who's that other funny voiced effer? What's his name? Jordan Peterson. Sounds like Kermit the Frog. Why would you listen to this Kermit the Frog person? I don't know. There you go. A good wig and dress makes you pretty. Indeed, I'm sure it does. But yeah, the fact that a lot of these people, they don't want to argue, they don't want to debate, they just want you to shut up. And genuinely, I think that is the best thing that you can do, the best thing that I can do, is to not shut up. It's to just keep going on. And when something happens, and it's exactly what was predicted on the Three Blokes in the Pub 4 years ago, when I was making Three Blokes in the Pub with Kieran and Jason and Adam, and we can say, we predicted this. And then we didn't even predict it. Predict it makes it sound like we took a guess. We said this would happen because it was as obvious to us as night following day. What, you want to have more checks on the border? Well, there's going to be queues, isn't there? What, you want to get rid of all the European workers? Well, there's going to be huge job vacancies. hundreds of thousands of job vacancies. And what's the knock-on effect of all these job vacancies? Well, we can't pick the freaking fruit for the harvest. We can't get people on the plane because we haven't got the stuff. EasyJet. We can't get people in and out of the country easily because they're going to get stamped with their passport now. This was self-evident. People don't want to argue anymore. I mean, I don't think they ever did, really. Especially they never wanted to argue in good faith. But what they really want to do is just shut you down. These are the people, the free speech martyrs, who are obsessed about their free speech. But when it comes to your free speech, my free speech, now we can go to hell. We can genuinely go to hell. And that is mad, isn't it? That is just... The hypocrisy of these people is off the charts. And these are the people who are constantly looking for hypocrisy in others. And the reason they do that is to feel better about themselves, because they know they're thick and they know they're not very nice people. They're not going to get in a car and drive to Ukraine and help people. They're not going to do that. But if you do, or if I do, then they've got to think of a way in which that makes us hypocrites. Oh, you're not doing it for Yemen. You're not driving to help the people of West Papua getting self-determination from the Indonesian aggression of 1975. Yes, I know I'm not. I can't drive to West Papua. I can't drive to Yemen. I can't drive to Eritrea. I can't drive to Libya. Really, I can't afford it. I don't have a car. To borrow something, I can borrow something for a couple of days, but not for the weeks it would take me to get over there. What difference would it make? At least here I can actually make a difference to a family. But no, they've got to find some way of cocking a snook and saying, you know, do you know what would be better, Graham, if you stayed home and just didn't bother? And it's painful because obviously everyone has a little demon on their shoulder, you know, little lazy wanker who says, oh, you shouldn't do things. You shouldn't do things. Just look after number one. Just look after number one. But most of us keep that down. You know, most of us say, yo, shut up. No, I can't help people, so I will. But these other people who are just, they want to justify their greed. They want to justify their sloth and their fecklessness. Well, they want to justify the fact that they obviously feel guilty about not getting up and doing something. But instead of channeling that into supporting people who do, either financially or even by just sharing what they're doing on social media or something, rather than doing that, they have to have a go and say, oh, you're just doing this for your own ego. Oh, piss off. Do you know what? If I want to do stuff for my own ego, I'll just do videos in my own house. I don't have to travel all the way to bloody Ukraine, for Christ's sake. It's kind of mad, isn't it? Like, you know, the stuff I can do for my own ego. I can do that without getting out of bed, love. If you know what I mean. But, like, why would I bother? It's like a lot of hard work. But, yeah. But anyway, I transgress. I don't think he's using the right words. Just go off the A1M. I'm on a normal road there. 20 minutes away. Just got a message off Catherine saying, where are you? Where are you? So I'll have to send her a message. It's always fun because I've got to try and do it using the GOOGLE app because I'm driving, so I have to say what I want to say. And it's got this really annoying habit. First of all, it can't get my girlfriend's name right ever, so I've had to put it into my phone a certain way in order for it to actually, because her name's Catherine and it just doesn't understand any other spelling of the name Catherine except with a C, which Catherine's not spelled with a C. And yeah, and also, so it tries to ring up someone else I know called Catherine, or send them a message, even worse. And then it'll say, do you want to send this message? And you're like, no, you got the words wrong. And then you try and do the messages you wanted, because with my very strong, impenetrable Scouse accent, it can't understand what I'm saying. And it just sends the message. It doesn't even ask, is this right? It goes, sending message, fruitcake, bananas, upskirt, Johnny. And you're like, what? Don't send that. And it just sends it. And you're like, what the hell? Is this some technology? Is this the future? I think we just had some argy-bargy there. There was a little minivan thing, and I think there was a Honda right up its backside, so the minivan slammed its brakes on, and the Honda nearly went into the back of it. Let that be a warning to you. Keep your distance. Right, so I'm off the motorway now. I can touch my phone if I pull over. Although, one of the mad things about Durham is it is just motorway city. Not motorway, roundabout city. So many roundabouts. Confusing as all the roundabouts are the same. But it means that you rarely get to stop. When you stop at the traffic lights, you get a minute to adjust your wellies, look at your meters out, and have a cup of tea, whatever you want to do. But yeah, here in Durham, it's just keep going. Unless you're in a traffic queue and then just edging very slowly forward. It's almost frustrating. The way I'm going, actually, I might actually drive past Dominic Cummings' house, like his parents' house. I think he's moved back with his parents since leaving number 10. Mummy, Daddy, I'm home. Now I know where that message came from. It was me. I was trying to use the Google Voice thing. It just doesn't understand my accent. It just comes out with absolute nonsense. But one of the things with Google as well is obviously when I'm doing a video chat with Catherine and she needs the subtitles up, and sometimes the subtitles come up wrong. And one time when I was in Bocas, when I was on Ginger Island, I was having a chat with her on the chat app, whatever, and for some just unknown reason, it came up in the captions something I did not say in any way, shape, or form that seemed to refer to by name an ex-girlfriend of mine and something I'd like to do with her. Like, honestly, it's not what I said at all. And I was like, Google, what the hell? Of all the things to say, I said. So just let it be known, Google is not on your side. It's just waiting for the day when it can, cause you mischief, cause you trouble. Never trust the captions. Right. I'm not liking how close this guy is behind me. I'm just going to pull over into the bus stop really slowly just to annoy him. There you go. Look at that. Now you're free. You're free to drive as fast as you like. Mary Poppins. Dog service. Right. Park. Handbrake on. Engine off. I can touch my phone now. Thank you very much for watching. I will try and do a little bit of a live show later when the results come in for Boris Johnson for his vote of confidence, no confidence, I hope, and hopefully we'll be bringing Ben Chambers into the conversation and chatting about what next for Boris Johnson, the Conservative Party, and for UK politics in general. So thanks for watching. Sorry this is a bit of a truncated edition of UK for UKR.com. If you would like to give for future missions, because obviously we are really, we've done so much already. There's not much money left for doing more runs over to Ukraine. So anything you can give, please bung it in, because it means we'll at least be able to do one more trip, which you really want to do. And look, if you've already given money, thank you so much. Consider just sharing this. Consider going to uk4ukr.com and sharing that URL with your friends, saying, look, this guy I follow on YouTube, he's been going over to Ukraine. Here's his website, and it's got all the blogs on for our trips over there. They're all up to date, and some videos on there, and pictures and stuff, introducing a lot of the people who have helped out, because this isn't just me. This is Kieran, this is Bear, this is Gordon. There's loads of other people who have helped out along the way, and even the little doggy, you can see it there, the blue thing, the little doggy box that I picked up from Michael, who's actually Ukrainian, who lives in Newcastle. I picked that up from him yesterday. And so many people have helped out. So yeah, just to share, a share on Twitter, a share on Facebook, a share here on YouTube. You can post things on YouTube now if you want to. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully I'll be back soon, and until then I'll say hello, good evening, welcome.